going on, everybody? My name's Sean Bowman.
And I'm Jeff.
And we're here in the Shock Surplus shop to talk more Eibach. Jeff's been testing the Stage 1 kit on his brand new Tundra for the last few months, and we're bringing it in to do the swap over to the Stage 2R kit. We have tested Eibachs for thousands of miles between his Tundra, even your Silverado, Steve's Ranger, my Bronco, and so we have a good idea how a lot of these shocks feel, and for the most part, we often find them to be a nice sweet spot between something that's as firm as like a Bilstein 6112 or 5100 and something as soft and cushy as a Fox 2.0, which we think is probably the Goldilocks zone for a lot of you guys out there. And I'm sure a lot of you viewers have come to know Jeff from his long travel 37-inch tire having second gen Tacoma, but that's not how he gets to work. Could you give us a little idea of how you're using this Tundra, besides daily driving it, and what other upgrades have been done to it?
So the Tundra is the family mover. When the family wants to be comfortable, they want to hit the trails with me, we're probably going to take this out. Tow the trailer, tow the side-by-side, haul around the dirt bikes. Just a fun, comfortable family mover. Right now, nothing done to it, just basic lights, because lights before lockers, of course. And some 315 7017s on method, I think MR 318s with a plus 25 offset wheel.
That truck really has to do it all, which is a tall task for any suspension system. What's all included with the Stage 1 kit, and how much lift should most people be expecting?
So the Stage 1 kit is going to include Eibach's front and rear shocks, front springs, and rear springs. The rear springs will get you in 1.1 inches of lift, and then on the front, with the circlip set at the bottom, you should expect to see 2.6 inches of lift. Eibach does say you could go up to the second notch for 3.2 inches of lift. But that's something that I would not recommend.
Yeah, it is important to note that the Pro Truck Sports included in the Stage 1 kit are the same ones you would buy individually and reuse your stock springs, so they ultimately do have some limitations we'll get to in a little bit. So, what did you like about the Stage 1 kit?
To be honest, not much. It lifted the truck, which is what I was looking for, 2.6 inches of lift. Rear end came up 1.1 inches of lift. The rear shocks felt great. Just the front end, they topped out way too much for what I was liking and how I used the truck.
Yeah, and I will say, like, when I drove it, I could not believe it was a truck, how well it handled, and small bump compliance was great, but I will agree, yeah, the second you hit a bump that was big enough at the wrong speed, you're just ka-chunk topping out, and that felt pretty harsh. Let's talk about a little bit why that is. As I was stating in the previous section, these are the same struts that are designed to be used with your stock springs and can be set as low as stock height. Because of that, they're limited on how much travel they can give you. And in fact, these struts are basically the same length as the stock TRD off-roads the truck had before it, which gave us a very similar ride that what we felt when we tried a Westcott lift kit, which is basically you ain't got no droop travel. I think this would probably be fine if you just kept your stock springs set at one of the lower settings, maybe like 1.5 inches of lift, because then you would still have some droop travel. But after first installed, we maybe had 2 inches of droop, which just isn't enough.
No, I will say, after about 2 months of driving with these on, the ride height did come down a little bit, and it did feel a little better. But as soon as I put weight in the back and I was off-road, it got worse.
Yeah, and that probably all had to do with, one, it was a new truck, and so the spring seats hadn't bedded in yet. So initially, when first installed, there was probably a little bit too much real-world preload that worked its way out by the basically insulators compressing over time. But even so, like Jeff said, I just don't think that's enough travel in the front for 2.6 inches of lift. And that's why we say don't hit that 3.2 inch lift setting. I would imagine you would just be driving it topped out with it on level ground. So the real reason why we're in here today is to step Jeff up into the Stage 2R kit. But what is a Stage 2? What is a Stage 2R kit, and what's included with both?
So the Stage 2 kit is everything that you get in the Stage 1, except on the front you get a coilover. And the Stage 2R is everything that you get in the Stage 1 and Stage 2, except the rear shocks are now going to be a Reservoir. If you were an early adopter on the Stage 1 kit and you wanted to switch over to a new coilover, you can also buy that separately.
Yeah, the cool thing about the Eibach is, for the most part, every part they sell in terms of their full Stage 1, Stage 2 kits are not only available individually, but prices come out to be about the same as well. So, if you started Stage 1, you wanted to upgrade, you're not really losing out, or you could at least piece a kit together, which is also great if you were just looking for a leveling kit and didn't want to lift the rear. And what about lift heights on the coilovers? Are those the same as the Stage 1 system?
So the maximum lift height is the same, but on the coilovers you have a range of 0.8 to 3.2 inches of lift, and because it is a threaded body coilover, you could go anywhere in between. On the Stage 1 kit you have 2.6 inch or 3.2. Stage 2, the coilovers are going to be a little bit longer, so even at that 3.2 inches of lift, I suspect they're going to ride a little bit nicer.
Yeah, and we actually measured it at the shock itself. It's about 0.6 inches, and then just under an inch at the wheel, because there is a motion ratio there. Now, we are talking about more travel, and there is a bit of a conundrum of axles with these Tundras. It's my understanding that the base models get a black, the black axles that have a tripod like old Tacomas and 4Runners have always had. The TRD Off-Roads and Pros, like the one we have behind us, get the reds, which are a Respa joint, very similar to like what Ford uses or what's commonly used on a lot of off-road race applications. And then they have the TRD Silvers, which use the same joints as the reds, but are a little longer, so you have more joint engagement when the suspension fully extends. Now, with that extra travel, do you think these will still work with the blacks?
So they should, but you can get a diff drop for $35, and I say that's worth it if you're throwing on the longer coilovers.
Yeah, I think so too, and it's also important to remember these use OE style bushings, and you're still going to probably have an OEM style bushing at your lower control arm. So if you're running a big tire, 35, 37, or even bigger tire, that's a lot of weight in the suspension. If it ever droops out hard, it may not bind in a static situation, but with bushings flexing and moving, you may see that bind. And for $35, you might as well. They're also a heck of a lot easier to install as well. The coilovers come preloaded already, and I think they're probably set around 2 inches of lift out of the box. But that steel threaded body means, one, you ain't gonna ever need a spring compressor. Two, as long as you put the vehicle on jack stands so you're not trying to lift the whole weight of the truck, you can make very finite and very large ride height adjustments while they're still installed. Plus, with that extra travel, I think we can both agree if you can swing the 2.0 coilovers or the Stage 2 kit, it's worth every penny. But why would you want to step up to Stage 2R and get the Reservoir in the back?
The biggest difference between the Reservoir and non-Reservoir rear shocks is the Reservoir rear shocks are going to have a more linear piston versus a more digressive feel on these non-Reservoir shocks. So if you're going to be taking your truck off-road a lot, you want a little bit more comfort, a little more better bottom out control. Stage 2R is going to be the way to go.
Yeah, well, and that's the one thing we really love about Eibach is they're not married to that linear or digressive piston design. They will update it based on application, and in this case, use case. They figure if you're wheeling it hard off-road, you want something that has a little bit better small bump sensitivity, a little bit more support, and has more cooling. So, I do agree. You're taking it off-road a lot. I think this is worth it. By comparison, the regular Pro Truck Sport rear shocks are digressive because they have to be able to do it all. So if, you're like Jeff and you're not maybe wheeling it as hard as Jeff likes to wheel it, having something digressive will probably be a good compromise for still being good under a load and still being pretty comfortable when unloaded as well. Well, we got to get back to working on this truck so we can get it out of here, at least today. install, and once we pulled the new 2.0 coilovers out of the box and compared them to the Stage 1 Pro Truck Sports with their springs on it, we immediately noticed that they were about 0.6-ish of an inch longer. So when we got the other side on, we immediately measured to see how much more wheel travel that is, and with that motion ratio, that 0.6 inch of additional stroke of the shock worked out to just about an inch more travel, which is going to be a really big deal for us here. Essentially, the Stage 1 setup, the Pro Truck Sports, were the same length as stock, and that's because they still have to work with stock springs and still work at stock height. They had a little bit more room to play when you're making a full coilover, and so they gave us a true additional inch of travel, and that means these will give you actually more droop travel at their highest lift setting that's recommended, which is about 3¼ inches of lift, than the Stage 1 kit does at the lowest recommended lift setting, which is 2.6 inches. I can't think of a better win there, and that should at least solve a lot of the issues we've had with topping out. So we're stoked on that. If you liked anything you saw here, make sure you punch that like button as hard as you can. Otherwise, if you're interested in these Eibachs or anything else we carry, leave us a comment below. Hop on shocksurplus.com. We got you covered. Otherwise, make sure you're subscribed so you catch the next episode of Shock Talk. And in the meantime, we'll see you out on the trail.